Okay, it looks like we are running. Let us opening our logo on the 15th of June 2026, our ongoing, exciting, disturbing year of doom. Welcome to Evolution Hour, tartucanwordpress.com. Wonderful material available at the website as noted every single week. So, a little bit late, but there was an update on the computer that had to be done, so we're proceeding as we can. As you know, we are getting into the wonderful world of Dwayne Gish. Evolution, the Fossils Say No, and Evolution, the Fossils Still Say No. Books, respectively, from 1978 and 1995. And comparing the two and constructing a master bibliography to find out what all he cites, and particularly, therefore, what he doesn't cite, and to see how it strikes up, how much new material was put in, which so far he's running about a quarter of the sources in the new book are add-ons, and so far everything that was in the original book pretty much is retained in the 1995 book. Anyway, here Gish is slamming into the baramin issue, although only from a distance. And it's showing how far back on the learning curve he was in 1978, because he's really thinking of species and sometimes genera as kinds. And he's even kind of considering this as the modality in the 1990s. This is still, therefore, the 95 one is about 15 years before the Ark Encounter would be operating off of the species, or rather kinds as family argument, which is the only way they can get the kinds down to enough to put them on the bloody ark. He relies on some overt creationist material, a 1970 book from Walter Lammertz, which, alas, is not available online. But he does cite Frank Marsh, which is much more relevant, his 1969 paper on living things, that's basically laying out a lot of the dynamic Marsh had been working on in terms of kinds going back into the 1940s. Interestingly, both the 1978 book and the 1995 book have a little typographical oof on the Marsh citation, because it lists it as volume 8 of the Creation Research Society Quarterly, when in fact it was number 6. And the fact that he's repeated that error through to the next book suggests that he wasn't particularly prone to cross-checking the typographical elements. Anyway, so far, we only had just a few smatterings of technical citations in the 78 book, only 9%, whereas we've got about 21% of the book is young Earth creationist apologetics, like the Lambert stuff and the Marsh stuff and anti-evolution material generally. That would also include Philip Johnson and that crowd. Whether or not those numbers are going to balance out a little when we get downstream into the ones that are ostensibly talking about specific technical materials, we'll see. I'm open to one way or another. And this time, unlike the material on the Jensen books and Rupin Sanford and all the rest, I'm not paying any attention to the number of misrepresented science sources, because for Gish, it's effectively 100%. And also, not a lot of them are going to be cited during this. I know how sparse the discussion of the reptile-mammal transition and dinosaurs were in the book from researching this thing earlier, but we'll be pinning it down to specifics this time around. Anyway, it's interesting that Gish even brings up the peppered moth industrial melanism example. And this was, of course, way back. He's citing page 51 of a 1968 book by Wickler, general book, which happens to be available online. So I'm going to be putting the linkage up to that, just like I'm doing on the Frank Marsh creationism paper. And so Gish is accepting that these changes are natural, but of course he's dismissing them as, well, they're still just moths, so it's not saying anything at all about evolution. What it is talking about is the dynamics of selection, natural selection, which of course is one of the underpinning presumptions of Darwin on trial. Now, those up on your anti-evolutionism will be knowing that the peppered moth case got to be quite a celebrity in the early 21st century, with Jonathan Wells playing it up in Icons of Evolution, that was based on some misreading of some material by the researcher Majerus. And ultimately, Majerus, before he died, did a follow-up paper that basically plugged all the holes in the Kettlewell research matter. So is a dead letter in the argument that peppered moth wasn't a legitimate example of natural selection, because Majerus helped confirm that yet again. And interestingly, people who tend to bring up the peppered moth example tend to be relying on this older apologetics, and to some extent there's wheel spinning that goes on with Casey Luskin and all that crowd at the Discovery Institute. Speaking of which, of course, this is a Luskin week, and we've got some really fun bit because we have a bit of a double whammy, continuing to go through the technical sources that the Luskin list is indicating, 3 more this time. And then there also happen to be serendipitously, Luskin is still beating at the no junk DNA drum. And he's quote mining from a paper just this year from ADDIE 2026, which fortunately is open access. So you kids will get a link to it so you can follow along, in addition to what Casey Luskin was dribbling on about. Pervasive transcription in the human genome exceeds background noise. And what Luskin is contending by this quote mine fest has to do with the fact that this paper was indicating that high transcription rate apparently is not due to background noise, that there must be some other dynamic, and they're not entirely sure what it is, although in some cases they know, hi Brian, in some cases they know what it isn't. And I guess Luskin didn't read it very closely, which, given the number of big quotes he's taking out of this thing from the first page, but also later on in the actual discussion, means how could he not have seen this unless he's a bat? Because explicitly indicating features DNA as functional material, all whatever is invited to on okay, here on our audio microphone. I don't know, device unexpectedly stopped. I hope we're back online. Counter's still running, so I'm assuming we're running online here. Let me know if we're getting any bleed outs in the sound. And the paper is really quite a fascinating one, and Luskin should probably read it more thoroughly, because it's looking more like the idea that there is a structure that responds more efficiently, especially in human beings, by transcribing things at the level that it's doing as a way to compensate or relate to something. But whatever it's relating to, it's not merely the presence of all these transposable elements. So it's still not helping his junk DNA case. There, along the way, ADDIE was citing a lot of papers, and for all practical purposes, these are not showing up on the Luskin list. There's only one peripheral one that ended up being on the Luskin list, but all the major material that's undergirding ADDIE's argument is not on there, even material that clearly predates Luskin 2026. So he theoretically could have gone into the thing because he's going all of his way of citing it. So anyway, now to the 3 papers that are on the Luskin list. 2 are from 2014, and 1 is a very recent one from 2026. The 2014 first one is Liang and Willows on circular DNA in a gene that figures in cancer cell drug resistance. So right off the bat, this one's slamming into theodicy problem. The other one is 2, because it's about ALU factors in tumors. And so the idea that you've got ALUs definitely playing connective roles in things, but not necessarily in a good way, as a way that it can promote disease systems in the body. The third paper actually is also bumping into the theodicy issue, but at a little bit of a distance. And it's possible that Luskin may not have read closely enough to look at it. By the way, we'll be having the links to the Liang and Willows paper and the Lowe paper, as well as the Agrawal paper. This one, Agrawal, is on the binding factor CGGMP1, which is 167 amino acids long, and it's parked near the centromere of human chromosome 3. And ALU is definitely interacting with it. That's what these other papers are talking about when they bring up ALU. And so it's certainly reinforcing the idea that something interesting is going on, but Luskin is reflexively assuming that that means that all of the ALUs are doing that, and missing the point that what it is they're doing is not always good. So this particular gene, this binding factor, was only recognized in 1990. And in humans, it, quote, gains hyperactivity in cancer, unquote. That's from a paper, Singh and Westermark, 2015, which is the paper that Luskin was citing. The Agrawal stuff from 2026 is some additional research thing. Oh, no, I got it backwards. Yes, Agrawal he's citing. The Singh and Westermark is a background paper that I looked up. The Agrawal paper had in fact discussed a lot of the Singh people's group papers, but not particularly this 2015 one that goes into the cancer part. But the titles of them are all indicative that it's about cancer elements. Also, CGGMP1, which has diverse role in amniotes. There's some in arthropods, there's some in mammals, lots of ones in fish. Coelacanths are among the groups. It appears to have originated from the HAT transposon, according to a paper by Yellen et al. 2021, which we are also going to be linking in the list. So it's going to be a really fun operation. Plow through those papers because they're really entertaining and interesting insights into the current state of the art, and cross-compare with the authority quoting that Luskin is doing regarding that Addy paper to indicate, really, Casey, you got to get your act together on this front. You're grasping at straws, but I'm thinking that he's never going to see that he's grasping at straws. None of these works have buttressed the primary point that the DI has tried to do, which is that most, if not all, of the junk DNA is functional. And none of this work supports that. It supports the notion that some of it definitely is, and therefore a blanket description of it all as junk DNA is functionally obsolete. But no one's arguing that today. But only maybe 10, 15, 20%-ish of that junk DNA could be traceable to actual activities. And as we can see from this theodicy angle, it's not always good stuff. So why is he not paying attention to all of this? Unless he's going to be arguing that the designer, allegedly, Jesus Christ, was doing all of this stuff. And when exactly in the human genome was this happening? There's a whole this happened, then this happened, then this happened superstructure that's implied by what Luskin is bringing up with these papers that they never bother to think about. There's never a functional model structure of where they're taking a commitment on where do these things come from? When did they come from? All of them in one piece? Piecemeal, separate generation of transposons in the genome? What exactly is going on? You will look in vain in any of the intelligent design literature, to my knowledge, and if anybody has a counterexample, please bring it up, put it in the notes or whatever. I'd love to see it. Of any intelligent design person ever trying to specify the ID model of what was happening with any of these little components over time. And you can start with CGG MP1 if he likes. That's going to be perfectly fun. So 2 weeks from now, we'll then be back on to adding on some more material in Luskin. It's a big, the column for all that ALU short interspersed nuclear elements category is the biggest blob of material that I can see in their list. But the question is just exactly how many. So far, there's been a couple examples of double dipping where the same paper is actually listed more than once. But so far, It's been just a couple of those. So we'll find out exactly how many. I'd like to know exactly how much it is, and whether by any stretch of the imagination we can see any of this stuff buttressing their case. Because the more we're plowing into older papers, the more we are not overturning the points, because we've already been discussing papers from 2025, 2024, 23, and all that. And so all of these little technical papers from a decade earlier are merely the background research in many of these cases, because an awful lot of the scientists are popping up in as co-authors in the various papers and all of that as you go through it. Remember, the list is not alphabetical, and it's not chronological. It's a mishmash of bits that are lumped together in topical blobs. And that's about it, with no annotation, no description. It's just a long list. And if he was thinking that we were going to be overly intimidated by that, well, sorry, Buckaroo. We'll see what's going on. So anyway, that's where it puts things up now at the moment. We've had a busy weekend and week coming up. A lot of things going on in the Downard household, running amok with things, and also working on compressing the texts for the new book down to the point, because I have a target level of how big the first volume was, and therefore that gives us a ballpark as to how many pages we can accommodate. And I can my verbose 2 chapters on flood geology history and cryptozoology stuff is still a little long, and I've got to be wheedling it in, tightening up the material. The goal being that we will not be dropping out any of the actual topics and technical information. That'll still be there. But to get the page generation down, in some cases you just tighten up a paragraph and that pulls up a line. And over the course of hundreds of pages, you can whittle off many, many pages just from tightening up the text. So I have a ballpark on that thing. Once I have that out of the way, then I can dive into the Ark Encounter chapter, where Gish's material, his concessions and attitudes on speciation, will be brought up, because it's extremely relevant to that whole issue of how come we have so few kinds, and if we're running at the family level, are they really rigorously detailing it, and why are they putting everything in the order that they are? So this should be a really good addition to the scholarly literature. And then we have our human evolution thing, where they'll be discussing also the Darwin racism angle and that stuff that pops up in an awful lot of apologetics. You see it especially with people like Jerry Bergman, but over in the intelligent design camp, Weichert and that crowd are banging that drum, and we would be contending inaccurately. And then get all of our source material in. There will be a couple appendices on a catalog of the flood legends around the world, and particularly that Egypt doesn't have one, and material on the diseases and things and creationist circumlocutions on what little bad critters were doing, and were they designed that way, or how did they come to be that way, and stuff about the whole notion of how human distribution after the Ark can't be fit into a single model that will fit creationism. And all of those were things that had grown sufficiently massive that they were really too big even for an info box. And so they were justified to bump them up into appendices. And I'm also going to be shortening the phylum appendix that makes the text a little tighter on that front, so that the full-length version will be in the first volume, but the information and the source material will be still available in the second volume. But we don't need to go into all the little fine point fiddling that we did in the first book, and that'll save up a few more pages that way. So cross fingers that we'll be able to get all of our material in one fell swoop on this matter. We certainly have an interesting array of people that are showing that even the loony young Earth creationists haven't got a corner on looniness. Flint Dibble commenting on the stupid mud flood thing that has burbled up on the internet. Some of this stuff will definitely be showing up in the future book that Jackson and I will be doing on conspiracy thinking and that mindset, and triaging how silly a view is versus how dangerous it is, and of where, from a practical aspect, anti-vaxxer viewpoints, which are not nearly as loony as, say, flat Earth or mud flood methodologically, but in terms of the bad effects of it, shoot way past. Nobody is really having their lives disrupted, and lethally so, by mud flood belief, but they are from the kind of anti-vaxxer sentiments that are around and now becoming a briefly entrenched dogma going on because of RFK Jr. in the medical establishment system that's running, which shows that scientific illiterates should not be in these positions. We're working around it in Washington State, Oregon, Idaho, Hawaii, New York, and others. We're in like consortiums to basically develop their own independent state-based um, uh, um, standards that bypass the federal government. And it'll be an awful lot of staff, and things have been purged, partly in the Doge period and then partly in the Kennedy term, that may or may not be easily relocatable, and some experimentation and things that would be going on. You just can't pull the plug on some experiments and long-term studies without invalidating the results. So a lot of this stuff is going to have extremely long-term effect for our national position in science and medicine. Oh, well, don't blame me. I voted for Harris. So let us put our little advert on for, first of all, our thank you note for our bop around here and find my little menu and get that screen share going. We are well aware that times are increasingly tougher. Everybody's bills are going up. My bills are going up. And so everybody that is on the supporter patron bandwagon here, make sure you can afford it. And as much as I would be sad to see anybody have to pull away, nonetheless, everybody has to keep their powder dry during what may be really serious, bad economic times coming up, to make sure everybody weathers the storm. If Trumpista nincompoops get shredded by it, well, Schadenfreude popcorn is definitely available. So there's our thank you for all of our patrons over the years. And we much appreciate everything, because it's sometimes a squeaker to get by, but nonetheless, so long we can roll along from 1 month to a time, even if it's tight. Probably never voted for Trump or any of his minions or handlers. I am I viewed Trump as an unqualified nincompoop in 2016, and he has not improved. And from a methods point of view, this is an important diagnostic, because I would contend that 77 million voters objectively don't know how to fact check what they believe. And then 5 to 10 million people who voted for Biden in 2020 but didn't in 2024 because Harris was on the ticket, black woman, show by their fecklessness and indifference that they're not helping the matter. So that means what? 87 million people in the United States. That's not necessarily a majority. And there's a huge number of people that are technically registered or of a position where they could be voting, and they aren't. Well, kiddos, we're about to come to the point where this matters. And the idea that the fact that more people voted for Trump in 2020 than in 2016, and more voted for him in 2024 than voted for him in 2020, indicates there's a serious methods curve going in the wrong direction for people who clearly were willfully oblivious or regarded that Trump's bad behavior and attitudes didn't matter because my 401k is going up because of the stock market. Well, we will be seeing how long that will be going on. The third of the population were idiots. Now, yeah, you have proof. Yes, exactly. This is an empirical measurement. And absolutely nobody in 2024 had any justification, logically or reasonably, to vote for Donald Trump. In every possible way, the man was unqualified for the office. A malignant narcissist, a pathological Roy Cohn liar, a business incompetent, business fraud, adjudicated criminal felon, convicted of such by a jury, facing massive consequences, that a lot of which just disappeared because he became president, and the Justice Department under his control just makes it go away. Didn't get them resolved. Mr. Trump was not exonerated in court over the Smith indictment, etc. He just made it go away, poof. And The problem is that reality doesn't like to do that. And the things with the tariffs and now the war with Iran, that just goes on and on and on, where he's stuck with it. He can't get out. He can't pull away now. The Iranians are not giving in, and we're not powerful enough to make them give in, and they can prevent anything from being resolved in the Straits without such a massive military adventure, which may or may not work either. And so the Mr. I'm not the war president wants to be able to get in and out really, really quickly, like he had done in Venezuela and other areas where he didn't really change anything there either. I mean, they kidnapped Maduro, cute, but the communist regime is still in power. And so there's an awful lot of, it's a reality apprentice presidency, where he is a person of appearances and um, cabinet meetings televised, where everybody sucks up to him. And therefore, in his little echo chamber, everything is fabulous and wonderful. There will be a limited degree to which any reality is sinking in. But the problem is that the world outside that bubble is getting more and more problematic. And if enough shit hits enough fans, I'm watching the potential stock market blips from Nvidia, and there's a hidden thing about the banking leverage system that's going on that could theoretically be just as big of a problem as the 2008 meltdown. There's an awful lot of mess going on, as the high rollers in the upper level of the K economy are doing on paper really, really well, but people down below are not doing so well. And we will be seeing, if we can manage to conduct a free and fair midterms, there can be a lot of changes made. And that will be in spite of a lot of the attempts at gerrymandering by the Republicans, or I should say Trumpistas. So there we go. So let's put our little Rocks Were There book up to remind you that Volume 1 is still out there. Super definitive, meticulous breakdown not only of the Answers in Genesis brand of dumb, but oodles on what's going on over at the intelligent design movement, and reasons to believe with the old earth creationists and various folk in various niche venues, all beautifully indexed and organized. Anyhow, so it's a fairly short show, but we got all the basic things in there. Again, check out Luskin's post and the Addy paper, full text. Play around, look at the details of things, check up big chunks of the technical literature that Addy is citing will be available. I didn't go through to put all the links up on all of that stuff. And see whether or not you can spot. Well, one thing I did in my own analysis, I went through and boxed the quotes that he was dealing with. That way I knew a big chunk of it was just off of the first page. And then the remainder was on page 7, where he slips in just one little paragraph. Where's my little box? It's somewhere. There we go. That's our box. And he doesn't really discuss any of the technical literature involved in there, but none of it's showing up other than that one. The Matic and Dinger paper from 2013 is the only one that actually shows up in the Luskin list, which indicating this is like a decade old. So there is no model for any of this stuff in the intelligent design movement. There is no counterpart model in young Earth creationism, where they're trying to ram everything into post-Babel, typically with Jensen and that crowd. So do we have a self-driving car? Put a traffic cone on the hood. Yes, there we go. Oh, yes, we live in this exciting little world, and my description of the of Musk's Cybertruck is, it is the Edsel of Yugos. So everybody, stay super duper safe. If there's mucky weather or problems going on, as well as idiot ice agents and all the potential problems that can be coming up from our tumultuous situation, keep your powder dry, stay safe, and watch out for the wooden penguins. And we will be seeing you next week, kiddos. Ending the stream.